Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Hollywood Makers. I am so excited to have a special guest today with me. Her name is Helen Sam, and she happens to be the VP of Post-Production for Film Finances. She's been there for a while, but she also has a great trajectory in TV and film. She worked in documentaries and TV production for networks like PBS, ITVS, Film Independent, etc. But to tell us a little bit more about herself, her background, her story, here is Helen Sam. Welcome, Helen.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I've been in the industry for probably like close to 20 years, if not a little more. I started out working for a Hong Kong movie distribution company here in the States, up in the Bay Area. And then I transitioned into documentary filmmaking, and then and found myself here working for a completion guarantor, Film Finances, for the last, probably 15 years.
It goes by so fast, doesn't it? Like before you know it, you're counting numbers and you're like, oh my gosh, it's been this many years.
It does. I've actually stopped counting, which is why when you ask me, about my history, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. I started out, and I did television for a while. Yeah. So here I am in the world of independent filmmaking.
Yay.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, in your story, I know that you started actually studying sociology and library information systems, out of all things, and then you transitioned into film. Tell me how that happened.
Yeah, so I never went to college for film. I don't have a degree in film. My only sort of connection to film was that I grew up in LA, near the film industry, and they were always shooting, like down the street from my house. Surprisingly, I moved away from LA to go to college up north in Northern California to sort of get away from all of this. And here I am back in LA working in it. I did not get a degree in film or filmmaking or documentaries. I got a degree actually in like sociology and like communication and mass media. It was all theory-based. And then I eventually, after graduating from my undergraduate, I got a master's in library and information science, thinking that would be my background in the event that like film didn't work out. But while I was doing my master's, I was already in the film industry. I was working within documentaries at the organization, the Independent Television Service, ITVS, and they are a wonderful organization up in the Bay Area, and they fund documentary films. They have a lot of grants that they get from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
That's awesome.
And then from working there for a few years, I decided to move back down to LA and, tried producing for a bit and realized that path of producing really didn't mesh with my personal life. And so I found myself at Film Finances. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
And you became a VP of production, of post-production. How does the learnings that you had from all the other jobs help you transition into this part of the career of doing more post-production stuff?
Right. So so when I was working at ITVS, I was associate producer for the Independent Lens series on PBS. And what I was in charge of was basically managing the delivery of documentaries to the PBS system. And there were a lot of requirements, and basically I helped the filmmakers navigate the delivery pipeline to PBS. And so that was my first foray into post-production and delivery. And then from there, I got my job at Film Finances, and that I learned feature film production delivery. And at that time, we were still, films and distributors were still delivering 35 millimeter film.
Wow.
So that was really interesting to learn. Yeah,
That's
there was a little bit of a learning curve because I didn't go to film school. I needed to really learn from the bottom up, like what it took to deliver 35 millimeter film, deliver, so yeah. And now it's all digital delivery. And so that was like a new, learning. It took a learning curve for that one as well a few years back.
Isn't it crazy how we keep on learning because the industry changes so much in like such a short time in the past few years, right? Just with the advent of digital and then the new streaming services that we can distribute content, like everything's changed so much. I was reading a little bit about film finances, but I wanted you to explain to the audience what film finances is, what they've done, because they actually have been around since the 1950s. So what do you think has been the thing that has kept the company going with such a longevity supporting filmmakers?
Yeah, so film finances, wonderful storied history of how it got started. And the company started actually in the UK in the 50s. And, they started basically, for people who don't know what film finances is, it's basically a completion guarantor or the bond company. And we guarantee financiers and distributors that the film will be done on time and on budget. And yeah, that's our main, our guarantee there. And so what we do is, I'm in post-production. And so when a film comes in for bonding, we do a thorough vetting of the production and the post and delivery workflow of the film. And we vet contracts, everything, that it takes to make this film successful. We go through that vetting process. And then, once they get our approval, the film then, goes into production, and then production and post and delivery to a distributor.
Oh,
and
wow.
so, but yeah, the company, it is, in my opinion, and some people might disagree, but I think a completion guarantee is an essential, is essential to any independent film. There have been stories of independent films that went awry or had issues happen, and there were no bond company involved to vet the process. And so, you hear these stories. I want to try to not name some films, but you've heard of, tragic accidents happening on independent films, or budgets going awry, or, directors going awry. And when you go take a deep dive into these films, you realize, well, there was no bond company involved to monitor the film. And so maybe if a bond company was involved, that the film would, stay on track and on budget and deliver in a timely manner. But basically a lot of independent films and how they get financed, whether through a bank loan or a private equity funding, it's a way to guarantee these financiers that, please invest in this film. This is a viable project. It's a film that needs to get made. So, anything we can do to help ensure the financiers that they are investing,
they'll be covered,
in a successful movie, that it will be covered. Exactly. There you go. Yeah.
They're covered. Their money will be well spent and covered if, that the film will actually get made in time and in budget, basically.
Right. Especially for financiers who are a little gun shy about investing in movies. We're here to ensure that it's okay. Please invest in these indie films. We'll ensure that it'll stay on track, that it's money well spent and supporting the indie film community.
For sure. And that's where a lot of the new big filmmakers come in, right? They start small because they don't always have the support of big, companies behind them, or
studios,
which was very much a close niche area. So it's always good to have people support, and the fact that companies like Film Finances exist gives that kind of like a security net for the people that want to help out the smaller films, the independent films. That's awesome. What do you think has been the biggest challenge that you've faced so far while doing this job?
Gosh, there's many challenges, and I feel like I am always learning on the job, which is great, from like new technologies to, new ways of filmmaking and new ways of like troubleshooting. So biggest challenges, gosh, I mean, every film is different, and not every film goes awry. It's so rare that a film goes awry and then the Bond company has to come in and, take over, God forbid. But, I don't know, maybe a challenge in this industry, I guess, from what I'm seeing is, getting more independent films off the ground and made. The climate has really changed in the past year. As we all know, there's this industry slowdown, and the strikes, really, put a slowdown in the industry. So we see a lot of studios have cut back on production. So it's the challenge is just getting independent films made, getting them financed. Traditional financing models of, finding a sales agent, selling a bunch of foreign territories to help finance the film. From what we've seen, not a lot of that is happening. A lot of distributors, they want to sell a film with like a big name director or well-known cast attached, and that's not always the case, right? As we know in independent filmmaking, sometimes you just have to start out as an unknown, and financiers, please take a chance on these unknowns, because that's how they are going to be able to break into the industry and move on up.
Exactly. I was going to ask you about, because you were saying about learning, which I think is amazing, because I think that if we stop learning, we stop growing, and we stop growing, we just don't go anywhere. So the fact that you continue learning, one of the questions I had for you, with all the new technologies that are coming up, especially with AI, how do you stay relevant and evolving in your position and with the things that you do on a daily basis?
Gosh, good question. I mean, AI is still evolving, and like how it's being used and how it could be used is still like unknown and still evolving. But right now, at least speaking with speaking about post-production, without worrying anybody, AI is slowly being used within realms of post-production. But there's still realms such as, that you just can't replace the need for a human aspect to it. So, gosh, I don't want to give away too much and worry people.
No, of course not. That's what we're here for, to put out the knowledge out there, because a lot of people might not have access to it, and so like all these other stories come up and people start making things up that not necessarily are there to scare or to frighten people. It's more about knowledge, right? Knowledge gives you power, so that you know where to go after you know the right information.
Like, I mean, in post-production, as we're seeing, as we see a lot of scaling down in our industry, and not necessarily due to AI, just mainly due to costs and the amount of productions that are now in the pipeline. I mean, I think there's a balance with AI in the post-production realm. I think I think productions can carefully utilize various AI technologies to create a more efficient post-production workflow, and in conjunction with people, with humans. So I think those are some aspects of it. Cost savings, I think there are some cost saving aspects to using AI in the post-production workflow. Maybe in the realm of like QCs. I know QCing of final delivery elements can be costly. And right now, a lot of the QCs, it's done by a person sitting in front of a monitor, and that can be really subjective. But with AI, I think there could be some efficiencies and cost benefits to that in that realm.
Yeah, the industry is changing so much, right? The state of our industry is not what it was 10 years, 5 years ago, even with like everything that transitioned after the strikes, because of everything that happened within the writers and the actors strike. Everything changed. And it kind of is picking up little by little, and it's still not at what it used to be. I've heard that from a lot of people. So my question to you, in case of the state of the industry right now, with everything that's happened and the changes that came about after the strikes, what has been the one thing that you think we're facing in the media and entertainment industry, specifically in post-production, that is the biggest thing that you're facing right now?
I feel like in post-production, it's not even a big change. Like, in my opinion, the biggest change is, it's convincing filmmakers to, I know on low budget productions, it's really hard. Every dollar counts.
Yep.
But to tell people that, please do not skimp on post-production. It's continuously telling filmmakers, please do not skimp on post-production. Please, have a solid post-production work plan, because I think one of the biggest challenges is convincing filmmakers that post-production is really important. And many times I see it, not just actually on smaller budgeted productions, but sometimes on pretty decent budgeted productions, where people think they can just skimp on post. Mm-hmm. We can, don't worry, we can fix things in post. Well, post isn't free and post isn't cheap. Mm-hmm. You can fix up until a certain point, in post, before it starts costing you lots of money to fix. But it's just having a proper post plan. It's telling you, yes, maybe production budgets are shrinking, but that doesn't mean the post plan and the post budget should be shrinking. It really shouldn't. I mean, it's everything's digital nowadays, but it still costs money. It still costs money to, to operate and to deliver.
That famous saying that we all hear in production is, we'll fix it in post.
No,
it doesn't work like that. Like you said, you can fix a little bit, but if you have the raw materials that are not there to fix, you can't really create magic. As much magic as we create in TV film, there's only so much we can do after. So interestingly enough, you dove before into something about making sure that the independent filmmaker gets the support that they need, specifically with film, with financiers and stuff. And I was thinking that the listeners in our audience who are not so privy to the information of how a film gets made and how it gets financed, and it's a lot of process, right? So what would you say to those people, independent filmmakers out there who are trying to get financed for their films? What would be the two pieces of advice, or the piece of advice that you would give them to help them in that very treacherous road that it is financing? What advice would you tell them that would work for them and that would help them, in the process?
For somebody who's just starting out, network, align yourself. You as the producer or as the post super might be new to all of this, but network and align yourself with people who have been doing what you want to do for quite some time. And these are the people that, once you align yourself with these people who have years of knowledge and experience to help you get your project off the ground, you become more viable to, say, the bond company, to a distributor. People will want to, invest in you, because say you bring in like a line producer, you bring in a post super who has been around in the industry and who can advise you on how to get this project made. yeah, it's just networking, bring in the right people to surround yourself with is key. And be humble and flexible and listen to this advice. So many times I have seen new filmmakers, both creative and, non-creative filmmakers come in and, they think they know it all. And they come in for a bond, and we try to, excuse me, we try to mentor, we try to give you connections and resources, and it's, take that advice. We're not here to be against you, we're here to support you. And I think a lot of people in our industry, I feel just humble yourself a bit to that advice. I've seen first time well-known actors who turn directors become really good filmmakers just because they happen to surround themselves with the right people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. That makes so much sense because, like I said, all about learning, right? You don't know everything because if you did, you wouldn't be in situations where we are not able to continue whatever we want to put out as a project. So it's always the learning curve of learning about yourself, what your limitations are, and where you can extend yourself to other people that can, fill in those gaps that you might have. And also learning from people that have been in the industry for a while because they already know the pitfalls and they already know, how to take the shortcuts that make sense, because you don't always take the right shortcuts. You want to be on the right track to get the project going, whatever that case may be, or if you're acting or if you're producing, whatever the case may be in the industry, getting help from the people that know, getting those mentorships, like we've talked in other episodes, is such an important thing in this industry, in any industry, but specifically in entertainment and media, because there's so many things that we don't know. So it's always good to have people that can help us and guide us.
Right. Be humble about the advice. When you're coming into this industry, I feel like my pathway, it wasn't a black or white pathway. I just happened to, stumble upon it really based out of a need because I needed a job, and I found myself in this, put into this industry. And without any formal training or background or degree in filmmaking, I learned from, the bottom up. And I think that is, that's an important example of there is no right or wrong way to get into this industry. And it's not black or white. There's different ways to get into this industry, but a lot of it is just networking and connecting, like you said, with the right people and being really open to advice.
Yeah. I think that advice that you gave is top notch. I think that it applies to everyone in every aspect of life in general, but in the entertainment business for sure. Now, tell me a little bit about, it is the stressful situation that we work in film and TV and all that stuff. There's a lot of moving parts that we work with constantly, plus our normal daily lives, right? So how do you manage work balance? What does Helen do to contain herself and be balanced in your life at work and your life outside?
Oh my, that's a very loaded question. Gosh, it's fun. It's interesting because I guess there's a way of balancing pre-pandemic and now post-pandemic. So pre-pandemic, the work-life balance. One of the amazing things about Film Finances is that I, was able to have a family and and keep a work schedule that's, I would say normal business hours. Mm-hmm. And I was able through time to have, to put work boundaries in place.
Right.
I think it's really important to put some boundaries in place. And I was fortunate enough to do that. And when I say that, it's, not being on my phone all the time, not being on call. It's letting people know that, hey, listen, these are my hours. Unless it's a true emergency, can this wait? And I think a lot of times in this work environment, especially now that we're working from home, and I know in the beginning of the pandemic when we were all working from home, there was no boundary. It was like, great, I'm on call all the time because I'm at home, and I found, and I've heard from a lot of people that actually was not a good thing. Because these, people were getting texts at 8 or 9 at night. People were answering emails late at night, and that sets a precedence for the other party. Right? And so I think that work-life balance. It's maintaining a boundary, a workable boundary that's understood between you or me and the client and people out there. Obviously, if there's emergencies, I'm available. Let's not, if something happens while I'm away or on vacation or during the holidays, I am fully available and committed, to the work at hand. But on a daily basis, I just put some boundaries up, obviously in a diplomatic way, but I think that's key. Otherwise, and especially in this industry where sometimes, depending on who your client is, some people might be really demanding and demanding of you 24/7 of your time, and then you're never going to get that break.
Yeah.
That's
great. That's great advice. The boundaries that kept you balanced. Advice that you received from somebody else, maybe that you've applied and you said, you know what, this person told me to do this and this has worked for me throughout the time, or advice that has happened because you worked it on your life and you realized that it worked for you, so it might work for others.
Years ago, somebody told me, but something that I also like doing is being open to constructive criticism. I think that there's a lot of ego in our industry, and not everybody welcomes that, or they take offense to it. But I am a big believer in constantly reflecting on myself and the situations I'm in, and how can I better myself through reflection? How can I better my work process? How can I better my, my personal life? But constant reflection. I think that doesn't happen enough, not just in this industry, but in life in general with a lot of people, and I think that's just important, and asking for feedback, and especially with the younger generation that's coming, into the workforce in the film industry, is getting their foot in the door. I value that. It was something that years ago at another company, they used to do evaluations, and not many companies do, staff evaluations, but they did, and I just actually found it really helpful. It was just getting constructive criticism, reflecting on that, and how can I better myself? Yeah, reflection and being open.
I like that. I think
that happens a lot in our industry. I think there's a lot of ego at play, and it's hard for people to take that and to reflect.
Yeah. And I think that goes along with being self-aware of who you are and what you have to offer. Sometimes we forget to be, it's so easy to not be self-aware and just think that everything is perfect, and, when we don't hear other people, and like you said, that constructive criticism, to see where our weaknesses can become our strengths later on if we know how to manage them and work through them, right? So that reflection is so important for sure. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Helen, for giving us your time today. Thank you so much. I know that I asked you a lot of stuff about the industry and the state of it, but is there like a message that you want to end the conversation with, something that I might not have touched upon that you think it's important that we leave the audience with?
The state of the industry, I mean, I know there has been a slowdown in this industry and in this town, but don't give up, don't give up on this industry. I think it's I just going through a rejig, with the studios and the streamers. I don't give up, and that there are lots of wonderful organizations and people out there. Network. You never know who you're going to come across or who you're going to meet. I did it. And that's how I found myself in this industry, through networking, through, connecting with a lot of organizations in town who provide filmmakers support. And that's how I got to where I am today, where I am now, I guess, So, yeah, don't give up.
All throughout, great pieces of advice. Thank you so much. I am so glad that we got to talk. I learned so much about bond financing and all that. I had no idea about a couple of things. And so I appreciate it because it was a learning experience for me as well. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And now I know a little bit more. So thank you so much for your time today. I want to say thank you to all our listeners and our viewers who are always there trying to learn more from our community. I invite you to like and subscribe, and also follow Helen if you have any questions for her that maybe we didn't touch upon during today's podcast. You can send them over to us, and we'll try to get Helen to answer them if available. And just remember to like, subscribe, and become part of this community of the Hollywood Makers. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.